how the ancient wisdom of stillness became the most dangerous thing you can practice in a noisy world. Most people are terrified of their own mind, not of the world outside, not of the darkness, not of failure, not even of death in the abstract. No, what terrifies them most is the moment when the noise finally stops. When the phone is face down, the music is ended, the conversation has run its natural course, and there is nothing left between them and the raw, unfiltered sound of themselves. We live in an era of engineered distraction. Every waking hour has been quietly colonized by noise, by notifications, by the ambient hum of content, by the compulsive need to fill every silence with sound. And yet, the greatest minds across 4,000 years of recorded human thought arrived at the same unsettling conclusion, that within silence lies the one thing most people spend their entire lives running from, the truth. Welcome to the Mindful Path. I am your guide. Together, we explore the ancient wisdom and modern psychology that help us navigate the complexities of life. Let us begin. Part 1. The Architecture of Noise. Why we cannot bear to be still. There is a psychological experiment you may have heard of, though its full implications are rarely discussed. In 2014, researchers at the University of Virginia conducted a simple study. They placed participants in a room alone, no phone, no book, no distraction, and asked them to sit quietly with their thoughts for 15 minutes. 67% of male participants and 25% of female participants chose instead to administer electric shocks to themselves rather than endure the silence. Let that settle for a moment. They chose pain over stillness. The lead researcher, Timothy Wilson, concluded something that philosophers had intuited for millennia, but that science had never so starkly confirmed. The human mind, left to its own company without external stimulation, finds the experience deeply aversive. We are not merely distracted creatures by accident. We have become distraction dependent by architecture, both biological and cultural. The biological argument is this: the human brain evolved under conditions where silence was danger. In the ancestral savanna, quiet meant a predator had frozen nearby. The absence of birdsong meant something had frightened them away. Silence was a warning system. Our nervous systems were wired to treat the absence of noise as a problem requiring immediate attention and action. But here's the paradox of modernity. We have conquered almost every physical threat that silence once signaled. The predators are gone, and yet we have filled the resulting quiet not with reflection and depth, but with a new kind of predator, the attention economy, which has learned to exploit this ancient nervousness with breathtaking precision. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in 1654, nearly 4 centuries ago, words that read today like a diagnosis of the 21st century. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Pascal was not speaking metaphorically. He was making a precise philosophical observation about the relationship between inner stillness and the quality of human decision-making, human virtue, and human happiness. He saw, in the restlessness of the French aristocracy around him, the same phenomenon we see in the endless scroll of our timelines. People so uncomfortable with their own interior landscape that they will invent any distraction, pursue any entertainment, and engineer any drama, simply to avoid the terrifying encounter with themselves. We have not evolved beyond Pascal's problem. We have simply given it a faster Wi-Fi connection. Part 2. What the Stoics understood about silence that we have forgotten. Turn now to the Stoics, and I use this word not in its popular, watered-down sense of just endure things without complaining, but in the rigorous, philosophically demanding sense that Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca meant it. The Stoics developed a complete architecture of the inner life, and at the center of that architecture, they placed something they called hegemonikon, the governing faculty, the rational, reflective core of the self that, when properly cultivated, acts as the still point around which all experience revolves. For the Stoics, the cultivation of this governing faculty required, above all, the practice of voluntary withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius, who governed the most powerful empire in the known world, wrote in his private journals, "Men seek retreats of themselves in the country, by the sea, in the hills. And you yourself are wont to long for such retreats. But this is altogether a mark of the most common sort of men, for it is in your power, whenever you shall choose, to retire into yourself." Notice what he is saying. The retreat that matters is not geographical. It is not the weekend cabin in the mountains. It is a voluntary, practiced act of turning the attention inward, of choosing silence as a discipline rather than enduring it as a punishment. Seneca was even more direct. In his letters to Lucilius, he wrote, "Retire into yourself as much as you can." But he immediately followed this with a crucial qualification. He said, "Associate with those who will improve you," meaning, do not mistake isolation for the goal. The goal is not the absence of engagement with the world. The goal is a quality of inner silence that you carry with you into the full noise of life. This is a distinction that modern wellness culture frequently collapses. The difference between silence as escape and silence as foundation. Escape as silence is what we seek when we are overwhelmed, the desperate retreat from stimulation when the nervous system has reached its limit. It is reactive. It is recovery. Foundational silence is different in kind. It is silence cultivated before the storm, not after it. It is a practice of daily stillness, not because the world has become too much, but because one understands that without a quiet center, one cannot engage the loud periphery with wisdom, discernment, or genuine compassion. Part 3. Charlie Munger. The noise of markets and the wisdom of doing nothing. Let us cross now from ancient philosophy to modern mastery. Charlie Munger, the late vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, was fond of a phrase that mystified most people who heard it for the first time. "I have nothing to add." In a financial world of perpetual commentary, Munger's silence was not a failure of engagement. It was his most sophisticated investment strategy. Munger understood that most of the time, the wisest response to a complex situation is not to act, not to speak, and not to react. He coined the term, "sit on your ass investing." The enormous majority of investment errors, he argued, come not from inaction, but from the compulsion to act, from the psychological discomfort of stillness in a world that equates motion with progress and silence with laziness. The Stoics called the undisciplined response to circumstance passion, not in the modern sense of enthusiasm, but in its original Greek sense. Pathos, meaning that which is suffered. A passion is a reaction you do not choose. Munger called the same phenomenon something more colorful. He called it the Lollapalooza effect. The antidote for both the Roman emperor and the Californian billionaire was identical. The practiced capacity to be still, to not react, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing long enough for clarity to emerge from within, rather than filling the vacuum with the first available noise. Part 4. The Neuroscience of Silence. In 2013, researcher Imke Kirst at Duke University discovered that mice exposed to 2 hours of daily silence showed significant development of new cells in the hippocampus, the region of the brain most critical to memory and learning. Silence, it turned out, was a condition under which the brain could do its deepest work. This connects to the default mode network, the brain regions that become most active when we withdraw attention from the outside world. It is during this inward turning mode that the brain performs its most sophisticated integrative work, connecting disparate experiences, generating insight, and consolidating identity. Every notification, every scroll, forces the brain out of its default mode. We are living in a civilization that has systematically eliminated the neurological conditions under which wisdom and creativity become possible. We are cognitively starving. The Japanese have a concept, ma. It is a generative space between things. It is a silence between musical notes that gives the notes their meaning. The quiet tragedy of modernity is that we have filled in all the ma. We have paved over every pause. We have not made our lives richer. We have made them louder while making them emptier. Part 5. The practice. Reclaiming silence as a radical act. The practice of silence has 3 distinct dimensions. The first is outer silence, the deliberate reduction of external noise. The second dimension is inner silence, the progressive stilling of the mind's habitual commentary. The third dimension is the deepest, the silence beneath the silence. Marcus Aurelius pointed toward this when he wrote of retirement into the self. Munger pointed toward it when he spoke of the extraordinary clarity that came from simply waiting. The practice is not complicated, but it is demanding. It requires a taunt, a quality of patient, alert, non-grasping presence. Begin small. Begin daily. Begin with 10 minutes of genuine stillness. Notice the discomfort. Do not flee it. Treat the discomfort as information. Gradually, you will develop what the Stoics called ataraxia, a quality of inner equanimity that does not depend on the world being quiet. You will carry your silence into the noise. Part 6. The paradox. Silence is not the absence of life. It is its source. Silence clears the distortion field that separates us from reality. When we are full of noise, we do not actually hear other people. We hear only our noise about them. Silence, practiced genuinely, dismantles this distortion field. The deepest gift you can give another human being is genuine, undivided presence. And genuine presence requires a quiet mind. In a world of compulsive noise, silence is the most radical thing you can practice. It is the only ground on which anything genuine can grow. Take a breath. We have traveled a long distance together. Silence is not the end of something. It is the beginning of everything. If you take one thing from this conversation, let it be this. The noise around you is not the problem. The noise within you is. Marcus Aurelius did not govern an empire from a monastery. He governed it from a still center. He built one quiet morning at a time. You can do the same. Now, I want to leave you with a question. A genuine mystery for you to carry until we meet again. We have spoken today about the power of silence. But consider this. The single greatest fear most people report is the fear of discovering that when all the noise is gone, there is nothing underneath it. The fear that the self they have been performing for their entire lives might not exist in the way they believed it does. What if they are right? What if the self is not a thing that silence reveals, but a thing that noise produces? That question, what is the self really and where does it live, will be the subject of our next journey together on the mindful path. Until then, find your silence. It is waiting for you.